Hello, my fellow Alaskans. I am so glad to see you guys all able to join us here tonight. If you are just catching this live right now, that is awesome. This is a restream of earlier of the event that was held for Kelly Tshibaka, who is running for U.S. State Senate. I am now restreaming this onto YouTube and Twitter, also back again here on Facebook, completely remastered from the one that you may have watched earlier if you were here earlier. If you weren't here earlier, this is the exact same, this is the show that you don't want to miss. You get to learn everything you want to know about Kelly Tshibaka, and all the information you need to be able to contact her. She's very good at letting you know how to do that and to become a part of the process, not a part of the problem. So I am going to shut myself up here so that we can get this video on the road. Give me just a second here and I will get the video up and running and we'll send it on over and you guys enjoy the show. Don't forget to like and share. Also go to our website, Politadick.com, click that support button. All proceeds go right back into helping us continue to grow. Thank you all for being here. Hello, my fellow Alaskans. How are you all out there doing today? I am glad you are here to join us. It is 7 o'clock. We are here at Real Life Church off the Palmer-Wasilla Highway, and we have Kelly Tshibaka will be here as our main feature speaker tonight, and she will be discussing her run for candidate for Alaska U.S. Senate seat. Hopefully will be the newest senator representing Alaska come November, removing that rhino Lisa Murkowski out of office. Please make sure you like and share this video. Greatly appreciated if you do. If you are watching this right now, it is only being streamed on the platform of Facebook. Is the only place that we are currently streaming this live at the moment. And so if you're on Facebook, please like and share this. We will be doing an upload to Twitter and YouTube as soon as this is over later on the night. I am currently recording it on another channel so that we can be able to do it. Due to poor internet speeds, we are not able to bring it on YouTube and Twitter at this moment in time, or Politadick Unfiltered on Facebook. We're just on Politadick at the moment. So if you're watching this, you're just joining us, please like and share. It'll be Kelly Tshibaka running for U.S. State Senate for Alaska, hopefully replacing Senator Lisa Murkowski, who is in office right now. And we can actually have a conservative in office, or someone bottom line that will represent the majority of Alaskans in our interest, not the special interests in the minority that we're currently watching out there right now. So again, if you're just joining us at the moment, please like and share this video. It takes folks like you making sure that this video gets shared and that it gets liked, that the most amount of Alaskans get to participate, hearing from the candidates that are running right now. Today is with Kelly Tshibaka, and she's running for U.S. Senate seat, replacement of Lisa Murkowski. Take a moment again, like, share the video, and if you got a moment after this is all over with, please go to our website, Politadick.com, and click that support button. All proceeds go right into making sure that we can continue to restream these services out to you through Twitter and through YouTube, which I will, like I said, I'll be restreaming these again on YouTube and Twitter on a different channel that I'm currently recording right now. And but due to poor internet speeds, I'm not able to live stream to them at the moment. So we are only on Facebook here at Politadick. So please like and share this. And again, the restream will happen for Twitter and YouTube later on this evening. You're just joining us, like and share. I am going to go radio silent on my end so that you guys can enjoy the show. I am just going to let it pan the room here for a little bit so that you guys can all watch around and see what's going on. And I may pop on back on the screen here in just a bit just to BS a little bit more. Oh, good news if you haven't heard of it. Politadick, or not me anyways, but Politico, they got the hold of themselves some leaked documents out of the U.S. Supreme Court that says in the opinion that has been weighed out there, and I have posted on it on our page, that the Supreme Court's opinion is that they're going to reverse the decision for Roe versus Wade, so it'll no longer apply, and all of the states throughout the United States will have to go to what their constitution at the state level now says towards abortion. Just so we are all clear, here in Alaska abortions are allowed all the way up to birth. If you are not aware of that, that is what our Alaska Constitution says. So even though Roe versus Wade is being reversed, it does not stop it from happening here in Alaska. So don't celebrate too much, but it is a major victory that the federal government will no longer be able to dictate where things are at anymore. Brings it back into the state control, brings it back into our control once again, no longer having a minority few dictating for us here in Alaska what our rights are. So that was a major victory that has come out today. I will be having a very wonderful, fun video coming out here called Red Pill, Blue Pill, and the cure that we all need to have, the other pill that I myself, as a medical doctor that I have been for the last 20 years now, and yes, I do have an MD behind my name. I just don't advertise it. For a lot of you out there, this is probably the first time you're hearing that I'm actually a doctor. At least I got an MD at the end of my name. And but I have come up with the cure for the red pill, blue pill problem that we have within the United States. And I got a wonderful video that'll be coming out about that here real soon. My kiddo is currently making me up some stuff so that I can have it for it. And I hope you guys all enjoy when that happens. But we are here tonight at the School of Government at the Real Life Church off of Palmer-Wasilla Highway. And we're about ready to hear from Kelly Tshibaka, who is running for Alaska State Senate to our Alaska U.S. State Senate, replacing Lisa Murkowski. If you're just joining us right now, please like and share. Greatly appreciate it. I love seeing those thumbs up scrolling across the screen as I'm talking to you all at the moment. Soon this will all get started and the event will be live. Nice part is I've upgraded our equipment just a little bit thanks to your guys' donations and support. Those that have gone to the website and who have donated, I was able to pick up a big long 50-foot power cord here just the other day. So that way I no longer have to run to go plug in the laptop when I'm able to at least string out the cord. But I'm looking to still get up to another $500 in donations so that I can get a portable power pack that will go right along with my setup that I have currently right now. It'll give me 8 hours of run time without ever having to worry about having to find a plug-in for the laptop or my equipment ever again. This will really be a game changer for all the live events and campaigns that I'm going to be going to this year, and for make sure that we always can stream to them out to you live, no matter where we are and what platform we are on, and be able to give you the best performance over the broadcast that we possibly can. And it takes supporters like you to make that happen. Thanks to your support, we do have restream services. That's where we get it to be able to do it on Twitter and YouTube and Facebook all at the same time. We are working to also get ourselves put on the Rumble. That is also a paid prescription on a monthly basis. So it takes a lot of supporters out there to be able to get us onto Rumble, to be able to broadcast there on a daily basis too, or whenever we are able to go live. So every little bit that you can help us out is greatly appreciated. Again, go to Politadick.com. That's Politadick.com. Click that support button. All proceeds go directly right back into what I'm doing here. I have never put a penny into my own pocket. It is always to making sure that I can get the latest and greatest breaking Alaskan news out to all of you. And sometimes a little bit of national stuff, like the great Wade versus Roe decision that Politico has leaked. We still got a couple of months before we find out if that's actually going to be fact, but at least what they have leaked from the opinions from the Supreme Court, it will be overturned here real shortly. So that is great news for all of us. I have a feeling as with all things that end up getting leaked out there, it was leaked because they don't want their narrative to get spun around. It does look like they're about ready to begin, so I will be quiet here. Again, like, share. Hope to see you guys all a little bit later.
think we both 16.
Well, good evening. Good evening. How's everybody doing? Good. Everybody's doing good? Amen. All right. Obviously, I'm not Mayor Edna, but she got out of the budget meeting and she left me in charge, and then she got out of the budget meeting and I tried to hand it off and she kept saying, "No, you go," and I kept saying, "I go." So here we are. So if you stand with me, we're going to stick with the normal protocol. So we're going to open up with prayer, the pledge. We'll have Kelly come speak. How many excited to hear what she's going to come say? So have a question and answer time, and then any announcements that we have after that. So here you go. Open this up.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to pray the word here. So you can join me in it if you want to. It's Ephesians 3:14. For this cause we bow our knee before the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, in whom the whole family in heaven and earth is named, that are granted unto us according to your riches and glory to be strengthened with might by the Spirit in the inner man, that Christ may dwell in our heart by faith, that we being rooted and grounded in love, may be able to comprehend with all the saints what's the breadth and length, the depth and height, and to know the love of Christ that passes all understanding. Down unto the Father who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all we ask or think, according to the power working. Unto the Father be glory in the church by Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. Amen.
Then the dean's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Move your hats, please. Hands over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, fastest intro ever. So if you would, just welcome Kelly she asked, what is she going to share? And I said, whatever you want to share. Elect me. Yeah. So give her a hand.
Thank you, Frank, so much. It has been over a year, about a year and 2 months since we started this campaign, and we've started here. For those of you who were here that time I spoke, this was, I think, the first large speaking engagement we had, and many of the people in the room today have been consistent, faithful supporters, volunteers, and donors, and so you are a large part of the reason why we are where we are today. So I think really the round of applause goes to you. Thank you, everybody in the room. Yes. Also, we have some great news to share. We only have 3.5 months left until our, what we would call like the jungle primary or all-party primary. 3.5 months. So people are like, oh, it's such a long race, but is it? Time is of the essence.
Amen.
3.5 months is all we have left. And some other good news. I will give all this information as I go through the talk, but we are leading in the polls so much that even my opponent came out last week with national headline that says, I think I might lose this race.
She did.
But even better, yes, we're not going to fall for it. We're not lifting up off the gas, everyone. She's done this before. But maybe more excitingly, if you didn't follow this afternoon, there is a leaked news article from the Supreme Court. And it's still preliminary, and we don't know what the final result would be because you know how lawyers are. But it looks like the abortion cases, Roe v. Wade and all of their successors, are going to be overturned. Which means that what happens in 3.5 months and in 6 months is more critical than ever before.
Amen. Amen.
And the people in this room and the people in this community will make a difference in this nation. And I'll
Amen.
explain why. So in this last year, what have we done? We've traveled more miles in state than it takes to circumnavigate the globe. I think I'm on lap 2, which is awesome. We've gone to more than 50 communities and connected with Alaskans all around. So this is rural and coastal, it's interior, it's the valley, it's Anchorage, it's the peninsula, all Alaskans everywhere. Sleeping on floors, being frostbit, eating whale. I'm not exaggerating about any of that. It has been a great year. Alaskans everywhere are saying and thinking the same thing. It doesn't matter if they're in rural or railroad. It doesn't matter if they're Alaska Native or not. It doesn't matter if they're Democrats, Republicans, undeclared, or independent. Everyone says the same thing. It's time for a change.
Amen.
It's time for a change.
Amen.
And the other thing that everybody feels, and it does not matter what community I go to, it doesn't matter if it's as big as Anchorage or the smallest community I was in was 32 people, everybody feels forgotten, everybody feels ignored, and everybody feels like they've been completely shunned by Washington, D.C., that nobody cares about us. And it's only them, it's only their community, right? The rest of Alaska is being listened to, but not them. But the truth is, having talked to thousands of Alaskans, the entire state feels abandoned by elected leaders, and primarily our senior senator. And we know that government is supposed to be of the people, by the people, and for the people. But government feels like it's against us right now.
Amen.
And that is a common feeling across the state. And when government is against the people, what can the people do about it? There's just not much you can do. It's, you know, I grew up playing ice hockey, and government's supposed to be like those 2 refs on the hockey rink. Just regulate the plays and call the fouls. But right now, Alaska's got like 200 refs on the rink.
Right.
And we've all been put in the penalty box, we can't figure out why, and we just want to play the game.
Right.
Who gets refs off the rink? Now, if you haven't played before, I'll tell you, I've never seen a player be successful with a ref. And that's what it feels like across the state. We just want to get back to playing the game. How do we get all this bureaucracy, all this government overreach, all this federal takeover out of our way?
Yes.
It's not politics anymore, it's personal. It's not politics anymore, it's personal. Now, imagine that there are some of you here tonight who are like, I have never been to a government or political meeting before. It's probably the first politician I've listened to. It's okay, I'm not a politician, I'm a mom. I haven't done these political meetings before either. It's my first year of doing them. At the Republican convention that was like a week and a half ago, that was my first Republican convention. And it was 60% of the other people's first convention too. I can't tell you how many times I go to meetings like this and people say, I've never been in a room like this before. I'm like, you're okay, you're in common company. Because it's not politics this year, it's personal. Because it's personal stories that got us in the room today. And that's what happened to me. People ask, you know, why'd you run for Senate? It got personal. So my family moved up here before I was born. My parents came up looking for an American dream. And life didn't go the way that they planned, because life doesn't always go the way that we plan. And they ended up living homeless over in Russia Jack Spring Park on the east side of town in Anchorage. My mom, though, ended up finally getting a job working on the slope, helping to build the pipeline when it started up. And my dad got a job as an electrician in a union shop, and they were able to fight their way into working class Alaska. They got a mobile home, then they got a starter home out here on Lucille Street, and they had a little starter Kelly. And they gave me what we would think of as like this Alaska reality TV childhood. So playing ice hockey, my dad ends up getting an airplane, we're out on the weekends hunting and fishing in the middle of nowhere, eating moose tongue sandwiches. It was great. I started taking classes at the University of Alaska. I ended up being the first in our family to pursue a college degree. I ended up working for Ted Stevens when he's senator of the Appropriations Committee. He lets me work on the committee. I learned so much from him. And then he says, hey, you should go to law school. Please come talk to me before you make that big decision. Do you know how they treat vocal conservatives at liberal law schools? Yeah. I had death threats posted against me regularly. But when the left posts death threats against you and you grew up in a land crawling with predators, that's funny. They're talking about gun control, and I thought that meant 2 hands. So we were a little bit unequally balanced. I met my husband in law school. He happens to be the son of an African immigrant, and he likes loudmouth conservatives. And we get married and end up going to Washington, D.C. He gets a job there after law school. It helps to pay off our law school loans. We're the post 9/11 class. I had a hard time finding a job. So I go with him down there, and by the grace of God, it turns out there are jobs there that actually fit our values. They have anti-swamp offices in the federal government. I know. They don't fund them well. They definitely don't talk about them much. But I got picked up at the Department of Justice in the anti-swamp office, the watchdog office. And my mom had become an auditor, so I learned a little bit about that growing up. And I learned how to expose waste, fraud, and abuse, how to cut costs and reduce bureaucracy, how to hold insiders accountable, and I loved it. We could think of it as becoming like an anti-swamp bureaucracy whisperer or getting refs off the rink, okay? This is a great starter job, and for me, that's all it was gonna be. Just gonna get this career started, and then we're gonna move home. And I get this case, where I find FBI officials and high-level department officials, Department of Justice officials, work together with internal investigators to cover up that they had abused Americans, violated their civil rights and constitutional rights, and I end up finding evidence that they tried to destroy. I flip an agent to testify against the other officers, and it goes all the way to the US Supreme Court. And I get hooked. I mean, I'm just right out of law school. And I realize if you don't have someone in here who won't be bullied, won't be silenced, won't be controlled, maintains these standards of integrity that we expect everybody to be held to in government, then government gets away with everything. And it wasn't a job anymore, it became a calling. I decided I'm gonna become a public servant, and I'm gonna dedicate my career to serving Americans, to fighting a bureaucracy that just floods the rink and just runs right over us and our constitutional rights and just continues to take money out of your wallet to pay for a bureaucracy that moves to growth and inertia. And what are you going to do about it if people like me aren't in there, spurring them on to be government of the people, by the people, for the people? I love my career. I've done this now in 34 agencies, making government work well for us, and I could tell you some great stories. But I worked in 20 federal agencies, came home and did this in 14 state agencies, and it was great. Adore my husband. I'm an Alaska mom educating 5 kids. I've got one with me here. And I have a wonderful church that I love. This takes our story up to last February, right before I last saw you. When I was watching our senior senator decide whether or not she was going to confirm a radical environmentalist named Deb Haaland to be Joe Biden's Interior Secretary. And she said that she knew that this was going to hurt Alaska. She had misgivings about it. She thought that Deb Haaland would break her promises to us, which she has. But despite all of that, she was going to confirm her anyway. And she cast the tie-breaking vote to move her out of committee to the floor, where, of course, with the composition we have in the Senate, she got confirmed. So the only reason we have Deb Haaland in office today is because of a vote that came from our state. And with that single vote, we lost thousands of jobs in our state, just like the one that my mom had when I was growing up. It's not just my mom's job, it's all of our jobs. And it's not just our jobs, it's our right to pay for a roof over our head, it's our ability to pay for our children and their dreams, it's our right to be able to pursue an American dream. And I felt it like a kick in the gut. It got personal. And I just realized I owe everything I have to Alaska. And to all these Alaskans who came around me and my family to give us the opportunities that we have. But I don't think she feels it, because she makes a lot of votes like these. And who does she owe her big opportunity to? Her dad. And we felt that day like a kick in the gut too. And nepotism really breeds this lack of realism where you don't really understand the decisions you're making, how they affect other people. So let's go back to Deb Haaland. In the 14 months since Deb Haaland has been in office, she's helped to kill ANWR. She's the only person who has ANWR shut down. Biden tried to shut it down, but the federal courts opened it. Deb Haaland came back and shut it down. We have to do another environmental impact statement. She's helped to kill the Willow Oil Project. She just toured Alaska for a week and decided to go home and kill NPRA in the middle of us having a national and global oil and gas crisis. She shut down the road to Amber mine, so we can't mine out there. She's taken 60 million more acres of hunting off the map for us, so we can't do that. We have a member of Alaska who has gone to the Supreme Court of the United States twice and gotten us the rights to manage our navigable waters. Guess who's taking that back from us? Deb Haaland. And we now, Alaska, have to spend a ton of money litigating that in court again because we can't have rights to access navigable waters. She just went down to King Cove and of course made no determinations or indications of any kind that she's going to grant a life-saving road to the residents of King Cove. She still has to study the issue. I could go on. We don't have enough time. These are the things that one vote has caused us. But that's not all. Our senior senator has voted to confirm more than 90% of Joe Biden's radical nominees. This latest one included the vote for the Supreme Court Justice, Ketanji Brown Jackson, who she gave her full support to. But remember, she opposed the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh to be on the Supreme Court, and she joined with the Democrats in trying to filibuster Amy Coney Barrett. If she had gotten her way, this decision that looks like it's going to come out on the abortion cases would come out differently. That's how significant these votes are. Many times she's the tie-breaking vote in these confirmation decisions, just saving Kamala Harris the walk down Pennsylvania Avenue, but it reflects, in theory, what Alaska wants and believes, except when I'm out there talking to Alaskans, this doesn't reflect who we are as a state. We don't want someone who has bent over backwards defending child sex predators to be on the US Supreme Court. Right. We don't. She's taking significant amounts of money from big tech, radical environmentalists, and leftist groups in order to fund her campaign. People ask me why she votes the way she votes. I say print her campaign contribution reports and you'll understand. She's also got millions of dollars coming in from Mitch McConnell. He has said he'll fund her for the exact same total amount she raised in her last campaign, the whole total amount, bought her campaign essentially. I imagine that they're going to use that for a lot of negative ads against me. You guys have seen what they've already said. Mocking my faith, personal attacks against me and my family, coming up with more fake allegations. McConnell's McMillions don't actually persuade Alaskans, we know that. We saw that in 2020. It did not matter that Al Gross raised twice as much as Dan Sullivan. He still lost by 14 points. I just want to say that one of our priorities is reviving the economy, so we can just say thank you, Mitch McConnell, for investing in Alaska. We appreciate it. But every turn, we just see that our senior senator is bending a knee to the political establishment in Washington, D.C., whatever makes her popular there, no matter how much it costs us here. That's our concern across Alaska. And that's why I hear so many people saying it's time for a change. And we see that also in our poll data. So a poll came out about a month ago that Breitbart reported that shows that come August, we can expect that I'll have like a 17-point lead over the incumbent. That's amazing. But what we're really concerned about is what happens in November with this ranked choice business. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have on ranked choice. There was a ranked choice scenario run in that poll, and it shows that we're leading her already by 2 points this November. And so all we need to do between now and November is increase 2 points to even more points, and we win. That's the goal between now and November. But what makes me more excited than the idea that there's light at the end of this tunnel and we actually will see a change is that among people who say they were Republicans, and this was before the vote for Ketanji Brown Jackson, and before she toured the state with Deb Haaland and they shut down ANWR, among those people, her approval is at 10%. But statewide, guys, how do we vote in elections? We vote for the Republican candidate. And even more interestingly, in Anchorage, across all voters, regardless of how they identify, her popularity is as low as Joe Biden's. And Joe Biden's popularity in Alaska is lower than the national average. So when you think of all these things, we don't just want to run on sentiment, and we don't just want to run on emotion or just run on headlines. I think data is really important for understanding a race. All of these data points, I think, are really critical for us understanding that what I'm hearing out there is confirmed in the data to give you some information that our campaign's going really well. And a lot of that is because of what you all have helped to do to get our message out so that we can inform people about what's actually happening and what the real story is, and that the senator that we had 6 and 7 years ago is not the senator that we've had the last year and a half. And so what is this change that everybody wants and that everybody's talking about? The change we want, let's start with reviving our economy. If we can't live here, we're not going to be able to stay here. And Biden has this 30 by 30 agenda that's being championed by Deb Haaland. You can go back and watch the confirmation hearings when they talked about it. They want to turn 30% of the United States into federal parkland where you cannot walk on or touch it. It's going to be preservation. And guess where they're targeting as area number 1? Alaska. Land grab, land grab, land grab. 30% of the United States. And so what that means is we won't be able to actually develop our economy or develop our resources or live here and stay here. And that's why you see so much shutdown, shutdown, shutdown. Shutdown of the Tongass, shutdown of ANWR, shutdown of NPRA, shutdown of the 60 million acres. It's this 30 by 30 plan. There have been 23 direct executive actions by the Biden administration against our state in the last 14 months. Imagine if we flipped that and Alaska had some leader in the White House that could issue 23 direct executive actions against Biden's little state of Delaware. How would that go, right? Think about the assault that we've been under. We've got to revive our economy. We've got to protect our jobs. We've got to protect our workers, and we need to make sure that we block those who are trying to shut down our resource industry. We need to create housing that's affordable across the state. We have a housing crisis in every community, from the Aleutians to Tshibaka to even Anchorage at this point. And if workers don't have homes to live in, we will not be able to grow and stabilize the economy. And we need to create a pipeline, and it needs to be a jobs pipeline, where we can actually make sure that our youth are educated and trained to get jobs in Alaskan industry so they can stay here. We are tired of exporting our children down to the lower 48 so that we can watch them grow up on social media. And so we need to fix this jobs pipeline so that we can actually develop our economy with our Alaskan youth. Number 2, we need to reclaim our rights. Let's start with our rights to our land. To develop our land and to develop it responsibly, because I was just talking about that, we need to protect our environment, and the Alaskans know how to do that better than any bureaucrat in a beltway 4,000 miles away. We also need access to our land. We were granted land in statehood, millions of acres that we still don't have. If we can't get land back from the federal government, and I don't think they should be a majority landlord holder in Alaska, then we can't actually live here and work here. Switching to education, which is a huge issue in this community that we've been championing. I think parents have a right to be involved in their children's education. Amen. And that education should really be child-centric and not system-centric. And that is a right that we need to champion and fight for. We need to fight for basic constitutional rights, like our Second Amendment and our right for life that we see in the 5th and the 14th Amendment. And then we need to talk about our right to safety. Every Alaskan has a right to be safe. And we shouldn't have to live in fear of domestic violence, sexual abuse, child abuse, and missing persons and the threat to persons and human trafficking, all the things that we talk about. Public safety is important, funding the police, supporting the police, the entire spectrum of public safety is critical. We have a right to be safe. So moving on, we need to make sure that we require equal, legal, and safe immigration. What we're seeing at the border is not acceptable. I am married to a person who's the son of an African immigrant. I am tired of seeing drug trafficking, human trafficking at the border, and I know you are too. I also don't like seeing people drown in the Rio Grande. I think immigrants need to be treated with human dignity. And so making sure that we have a border, an open border, is not a border. Make sure that we have a border, that we enforce border security, and that we have legal and safe processes for our immigrants to come into the United States has got to be a high priority. I know that Alaskans aren't going to settle for anything else, ELS, which is why I call it equal, legal, and safe. We need to reform healthcare so that it works for Alaskans. It's not working across the state. We need to make sure our veterans get their benefits in record time. You are heroes of war. We want to treat you like heroes at home. I want to stop talking about suicide rates, and we need to drop our suicide rates, like actively drop them. That's critical. We need to do a better job taking care of our vulnerable, providing mental health services to friends, family, and community members that need it. We want to make sure that we're doing what we need for our businesses and for our providers, our physicians and medical providers who are leaving the state at record rate right now, and I don't think all of us need to be going down to Seattle for basic medical care. So making reforms in our healthcare system so it works for Alaska means it'll work for Alaskans. And then number 5, we've got to restore voting rights. And I'm very careful how I say that. That absolutely includes election integrity. But please keep in mind, I audited the Division of Elections in 2019. I identified vulnerabilities. I made recommendations for improvement. I saw the things that you all saw in 2020 and then some. Many of those recommendations have not yet been implemented. And I believe that every Alaskan has a right to vote once, and to have it counted. And I can tell you that some Alaskans are not having that right now. So voting rights, to have it counted, and also for us to trust our system, that it is transparent, that it is accountable, and that it is based in best practices. All of that is encompassed in what I would call voting rights. Those 5 things for us to revive our economy, to reclaim our rights, to require equal, legal, and safe immigration, to reform healthcare, and to restore voting rights, it's just common sense. And that's the way forward for our workers, for our families, for our children, and for Alaska and our future. I don't think this divided states of America rhetoric really works for us in Alaska. The lower 48 can just keep its garbage down there. We are all different, but we are all really united around common sense principles. And that's the way that we need to move forward. I think that we have inherited a great country, and it has come at the cost of our service members, like my dad, who served in Vietnam. Many of you in this room, people who've said, I'm going to give it all so that we can have it all. But to whom much is given, much is expected, right? And that was the question I wrestled with when I was deciding, am I really going to put my family out there and say I'm going to do this? And I realized more is expected of me than just sitting here and yelling at my television because I saw what I just saw. I've got to do something about this. And so I talked with our family, and we just decided, you know what, we're all in. This is not an election that's really about Kelly Tshibaka. I don't even think that this election is really about my opponent. I think that this election is about the future of our state.
Amen.
And I know that in us is that Alaska Iditarod spirit, where we're the kind of people who pull together as a team, and we'll face any kind of odds to go any direction we need to go for a long, long race, and it's been a long race, to make sure that we can save people in our state. And that's what we're doing this race, is we're pulling together, because we need to save our state. And so I'm going around the state and I'm asking anyone I can find, will you be all in with me for the future of Alaska so that we can push back on this Biden administration? And this is where this community comes in. Do you know, and I've kind of outlined how many times our senior senator is the vote, the one who puts bi and bipartisan, otherwise it's just the Democrats. The vote. This election is going to come down to about 300,000 votes. That's it. And do you know which community has the ability to drive the turnout that can tip this election? This little community. Do you know how Wasilla got its name? I did grow up here. Well, the guy who founded our town said, I pulled up and all I saw was backwards, and so that's what I said, all I saw backwards. Wasilla. I'm serious. This little backwards town could change the nation. Do we realize that? There are so many times, all of them down there, all of them out there say, Alaska? They ignore us, they forget about us, they marginalize us. Not this year. This community can change the seat that casts the votes that tip the nation. And that's how important you are. So I'm Kelly Tshibaka, if you're wondering how to say that last name. I'm for Alaska. I know you are too, and that's why we're here tonight. And I'm happy to take the questions that you have.
What do you think is the root cause of our economy, why we're having such a hard time getting it going, restored?
Yeah, that could be a really hard question, but I'll just sum it up. Joe Biden.
Do you know that our budget, our state budget funds abortion, and that 2/3 of the babies that are killed by our budget, the state budget? Think that has anything to do with it?
I think that there is a principle that when you honor God, God honors you, and we all know that. Yeah.
When you become senator, who would you prefer to work with as our representative?
Whoever Alaskans pick, and I pray that you pick one of the Republicans. Yeah. So please, so let me answer this very carefully, or what I'm saying right now, please hear me as if I'm saying it like this, very loudly. This ballot that's come out right now that you just got in the mails, rank 1, just 1 bullet, whichever one you want. If you color in more than 1 bullet, your ballot gets thrown out. In November, we will have strong feelings about who we want our representative to be. Whoever you put at the top, mark the second person, because if you don't, all gross will win. Did you hear me? Mm-hmm. I know you're going to be mad at that second person. Mark the second person. We will do better if we have a Republican. Rank red on the congressional ballot in August and then in November again.
So just 2, or all red?
Whoever makes it through. Yeah, I don't know who the top 4 will be and how many Republicans will be on there. Rank all the red people.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Kelly, as a freshman senator, what would be your strategy to reduce the outrageous $30 trillion debt?
We need to acknowledge that one senator can't do that on their own. So I don't want to sit up here and pretend that you're in the executive branch when you're actually in the legislative branch. There's a strategy for reducing debt. The first is stop spending ridiculous amounts of money, right? Block things like the Green New Deal would be helpful. Stop paying people to stay at home and not work when they couldn't go to work. I think that there are strategies we could get for wiping some of the debt off of the books. Debt that we're carrying to other countries. I think we stopped printing money at the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. 40% of the cash in our system today has been printed in the last 2 years. You wonder why your retirement portfolios are dropping like the Titanic? That's why. That's when we say inflation, if you didn't know what that meant, that's what it means. When you keep printing money, the value of your money reduces. Those are some of the decisions. We need to actually decrease taxes. When you decrease taxes, you increase economic growth and you broaden the tax basis, right? We've seen these policies work before, actually through time, going back over 100 years. We can see America policies work and also not work. Our current administration is a great example. I think one thing that would be really brilliant is to start budgeting government. We have a senator, our current senior senator, on the Appropriations Committee. In the last 11 years, how many appropriations bills have been passed on time versus by continuing resolution, which is just emergency budgeting, which is, well, you got what you got last year, so pay it forward. If we put this in allowance terms, think about this, parents. I don't know what you're doing. Here's the same $10. Here's the same $10, and I don't care how you're spending it, and I'm not watching. That's what they're doing. In the last 11 years, how many have been passed on time? Any guesses? Zero's good, 1, and it was towards the beginning. And instead, we just had another CR. They're supposed to be passed last August. When I worked for Ted Stevens, he drilled us into the ground. It has to be out by mid-August because government cycle starts on September 1st. There are many parts of many subcommittees in the appropriations budget. All of the bills had to be out by mid-August. It did not matter if you slept during the summer. There was no summer break for the appropriations team under Ted Stevens. Every bill was out on time. No emergency budgeting. When you do appropriations bill, you budget. In the Constitution, the budget, reining them in with money, is one of the ways that Congress has to check and balance the executive branch. When you don't budget, refs on the rink. And the spending just goes up and up. And so just cutting government, which happens to be a skill set I have, would be a really great way for us to reduce spending. And when I look at the other 100 senators, I don't see anybody in there who actually has ever worked through the nuance of bureaucracy on the other side, holding them accountable. So that's something that I'll be able to help with. Those are some strategies and principles that I'll live by, but I can't implement them on my own. But we have partners, and we're going to change the balance of power.
Thank you.
Do we have, a question over here?
When we win, the Senate may be as high as 55 out of 100. Sadly, we can't stop filibusters by Chucky Schumer. So how will you work to get the word to us that the majority is not just a party of no, but rather a bloc against tyranny?
Yeah, great question, Mike. I think demystifying government and how government works is one of the roles that your public servant leaders are supposed to have. So how do you interface with government? What is government doing and how does it work? What I would like to do after listening to thousands of Alaskans, we need to use our Senate budget to develop a really good communication shop. And that's going to be messaging in part to us, and I'll tell you what the other part is, in part to Alaskans, here's what's going on, here's what you can do, here's how to get activated, because there is something that we can do so that you can stay informed and that it's demystified. Government right now, there's this spectrum of deception that they call misinformation, or now they're going to start, they've got some police office that they're going to start censoring our information. The same people who told us there was no truth 10 years ago are now going to be policing truth. It's very confusing. Demystifying what's actually happening and who's what and who the power is, and making this understandable, and then empowering us to do something about it, because we don't work for them, they work for us, right? But if they work for us, you have to know what to do, and so that's part of it. The other thing I'd like to do with this comm shop is message to the nation, the reality of what's happening up here in Alaska. They think ANWR looks like the Brooks Range with Texas oil rigs because that's what the environmentalist groups put out in all of their marketing. We only have 500,000 voices up here as adults. Do you think that's a large lobbying group back in DC? No. But the way that you become a large lobbying group is by influencing the hearts of millions of Americans out there that ANWR is actually just an Arctic swamp for mosquito breeding. It doesn't have a mountain on it at all. And the part that we want to actually develop is, if you translated it to the size of a Major League Baseball field, is the size of a computer monitor. Oh my. Well, now we're talking, and do you know that we don't use Texas oil rigs? We actually use cleaner and greener oil and gas development than any of the nations we're now exporting our oil production to. And when we export it over there, do you know that their debris and their pollution, guess where it comes? Over to the western shore of Alaska. So we actually have the environmental damage of the Biden administration's policies. And so these are the kinds of things we can message out from a communication shop for free from a Senate office, because we already have the platform. Everybody wants to know what a senator says, but we don't have the ability to do that just on our own as a lobbying group because we're too small. That's what we're going to do for communications. Yeah. Yeah.
Over here first.
Okay. Yes.
Hi, Kelly.
Hi.
You kind of touched on this and somewhat answered it, but I was talking to a gentleman yesterday, and he basically, and I think this is kind of a rumor that's kind of going around, or some of the other sides, your opponents are putting out there, that you came to Alaska with the intention of running for the Senate, and you know, that this was your plan all along, and that you're kind of like a carpetbagger or something like that. Did you intend on running for the Senate when you came to Alaska?
I did not. I'm glad that you asked the question, because I heard this too. When I first heard it, I had to ask, what's a carpetbagger? Has anyone ever wondered about that? And so then they had to explain it to me. I was like, oh, okay. No, my plan was to come home and stay here. I have children who said, we're not going back. We don't want to go back. My family's here, my extended family's here. Aunts, cousins, uncles, dogs, cats, gerbils, they're all here. Everybody's here. The plan was to come home for a while. I'd actually applied for a couple positions and a couple of groups up in Alaska before. It didn't work out. A cold emailed Dunleavy after he got elected and said, hey, this has always been a dream. I'm this anti-bureaucracy whisperer. I mean, think about it, guys. How many positions are actually available in this state for my skill set? There's a lot of crickets in the room right now. That's how I feel. But he ran on this platform of wanting to clean up government, and it was a great fit. So he said, yeah, I have room for you on my team. You can come home. I got approached by it the first time by somebody in Juneau when I was meeting with them for confirmation, and I thought, that's just a really bizarre thing. Can I ask you, who in here wants to run against Lisa Murkowski? This is not something that's like, oh yeah, let's put me and my family up under national scrutiny for what? I'm an executive branch person. I make government work. I've never been interested in being in the limelight. Is the reason you hadn't heard of me before last year. And I said, no. But what I had been told this whole time is you're the only one who could do it. It sounds like, Obi-Wan, you're our only hope.
Amen.
And my response, even in January last year, when someone told me this, somebody very powerful in the state, was, that's not my problem. That's not my problem. Do you know whose problem that is? That's the Republican Party's problem. I had never gone to a district meeting. I'd never gone to a convention. You guys need to find some leaders and raise them up. My job is to fix government. And then she made that vote. And I saw our children's futures wiped away. And I felt that kick. And I thought, what if I'm the only one who can do this? What if they're all right? All these people who talked to me would have, I've significantly, they've stopped coming, they've stopped talking. What if this is true? I'm so not afraid of her. This just isn't what I wanted to be when I grow up at all. This is definitely not what I want to do. But what if this is it? And it goes back to what I honestly told you. I wrestled and I cried. And I thought, well, am I really going to just let Joe Biden and my opponent and their leftist friends continue to destroy our state and destroy our nation while I get in the car and drive from garage to garage and be a good commissioner? Is that really how this story is going to go? Because I'll tell you what, if I do, by 2030, all of us are moving out of here, whether we want to or not. I want my kids to grow up here and live here and stay here. And if that means I've got to take a long commute, well then, someone's got to do it. And I'm ready to do it. And could it be, could it be that all of those, that wasn't how that story was supposed to go, was actually exactly how that story was supposed to go for such a time as this?
Amen.
Another quick question. What is your position on abortion, and where do you stand as far as in the abortion debate?
So I'll try and keep this short so we have enough time for lots of other questions. I'm the pro-life candidate in this race. I believe life begins at conception. I've done this multiple times. I can tell you all of my children had different personalities in utero. We know that heartbeats can be detected as early as 4 weeks and brainwaves as early as 6 weeks, and most moms don't even know that they're pregnant then. And we should not allow there to be, we have the 5th and 14th Amendment say you have a right to life. And preborn Americans have a right to life, and we should not allow the taking of life of preborn Americans. That's where I'm at. So with this Supreme Court decision coming out, I think what we're seeing, and we've known this for a long time in the field of law, the foundations for these cases was legally and jurisprudentially and of course ethically and morally flawed. Mm-hmm. And now we get to see what happens from here. But people have asked me, how do we know you're not going to become like the other people that have been elected or other people who go to DC? And the answer, having been there for a while, holding these people accountable, always independent, always having standards of integrity that you have to hold yourself to. You know what your principles are and you know what your preferences are. Never compromise on principles, always compromise on preferences. That way, you'll always know how I'm going to vote. You're never going to wonder, gee, I wonder how Tshibaka is going to vote today. But you're also going to know I'm always going to get stuff done, because we get a lot of stuff done. Because preferences are always movable. We prefer, but we're going to have to sacrifice on that, because politics is the art of the possible. But this one, the right to life for all Americans, is a principle that you never compromise on, because you can never have a right to do a wrong. And once you start deciding that certain marginalized people, they no longer have civil rights, well, all of a sudden you're going to find yourself in the group of marginalized people. And so we want to make sure that we protect the rights of all people. Do we have one back here?
Yeah, Kelly, thank you for coming. If you will endure me, three different questions.
Okay.
First one is, when you were brought here as the Commissioner of Administration, you were tasked by Governor Dunleavy to investigate the Division of Elections. We still don't know what that looks like. We have no details. And I'll tell you, I was here on Saturday night and I was listening to Seth Cashner, or whatever his name is. I might have that wrong, Captain Seth. And I felt like, I think I'm a little bit offended by the fact that I've already paid for this, but now I'm paying for it again. But this is an outsider coming and telling us what our problem is. We've already had an insider to tell us, but we don't know. That's the first question. How come you're not divulging that when we have the administration? Looks like they're colluding to not do it. You can help us. That's number one. Number two, when you were brought, it was $80,000 for your moving expenses. I remember these things because, you know, as you proclaim, and I believe you, your faith is very important to you. Well, mine is to me as well. And so the way I live my public life is very, very, it's capable, people are capable of scrutinizing it. And so that's why the scripture says to live above reproach. That's the number 2 point. But the number 3 one almost bothers me more if it's true. And that is, when you came, Nikki, your husband, was offered a job that didn't even exist. I think they made it up. I think they just pulled it out of the envelope and said, well, why don't we just make this job and we'll just put this amount of money on it and let them have that too. That to me, it looks like it's not living above reproach, and then it kind of leads me to, if you get another position, it almost looks like bribery. Would that be a temptation in your next position? There's your three. Thank you.
Yeah, those are great. I so appreciate this. I've had surrogates of my opponent and leftist bloggers coming after me since my confirmation, and these are some of those lies and half-truths. So now you all can have this information to be able to combat this, and I need a mobilized team. So number 1, Division of Elections report. In my former positions, I've always been in an independent office with independent authority to do independent things. In this particular situation, I was not. I was a Department of Administration commissioner, and there were efforts going on through the legislature at the time to make an independent office, but I worked under a governor and under attorney general with different authorities under statute. And the idea of doing independent investigations and things was kind of a new concept that we were pioneering. So some of the reports that we did were made public, and this one, what we did on the Division of Elections, we came out with the review in 2019, and there was some discussion internally about what are we going to do and how much we're going to release, because a lot of the topics in there deal with the security of the system and other things that we found. And that decision was left in the hands of the Lieutenant Governor, and the Attorney General. And there was some discussion back and forth, and we're trying to finalize the report through the end of 2019, into 2020. And I was suggesting it would be better if we got this report out before the election. I think people got busy with the election. And then I got a public records request for it in early 2021. And I prepared the public record request documentation for my documents and what I was going to send out, and that was when I learned that the Attorney General, in discussion with Lieutenant Governor, decided that the report was marked deliberative process, the whole report. Deliberative process under statute here in Alaska means that the government can talk about things internally that are draft, like, well, what are we going to do for our budget, or what are we going to do about a criminal investigation, or what are we going to do about a policy proposal to legislature, and we don't have all those draft thoughts out until we come to a final decision. So that this was not a final decision, this was because it contained recommendations, it was deliberative. And so they marked it deliberative process, and it could not be released. So what I did is I released all the information I could, which were documents that were in my exclusive possession, or titles and descriptions of the document, because in the deliberative process statute, the people have a right to challenge the executive branch's determination that it's deliberative process, and go to court and say, the interest of the public outweighs the interest of the deliberative process, and this report should be released. So if you have enough information, you could actually appeal that decision based simply on the information that was given. And so, like you all, I value transparency in government, and that was the most amount of legal transparency that I could give to empower anyone who wanted to challenge it, but it really isn't under my authority under statute to say this can or cannot, and I did not have full information. So one of the other things that has been asked, and I think is in your question, it's now been, what, 15, 16 months later. Since then, it has been released, but now it's blacked out, and I wasn't involved in those discussions. I also don't know what's happened in the last 16 months. But I'm smart enough to know, having done this for 20 years, that something could have happened, like they could be working with DHS on cybersecurity exposures or infiltrations, and it's now implicated because of the report. Or they could have started a criminal investigation because of the report, and now that report implicates it. And I don't have full information, so I don't know, and so I can't go out and say, this is what's in, because what if we blow up a criminal case? Which I've seen people do when I've been in the government, and it's like the most reckless thing you can do, which is why we have a process through the court system for them to adjudicate these things and to empower the people to override deliberative process. So that's number one. Number two was the question on the move. Okay, there are 7 people in my family. 7 people moving across the United States is going to be an expensive move. I called and said, hey, we're going to do this move. The relocation is part of the package. Relocations are part of the move. And how does this work? Do you guys have vetted movers? No. No? I don't have trusted moving companies that we use for state of Alaska employees. We're the largest employer in the state of Alaska. No. You have to call movers and you have to get the cheapest vendor, and then that, by statute, is who you have to go with. Okay, so I start calling around. The first guy says it's going to cost you 50 to 60 grand for 7 people all the way to Alaska. If anybody tells you anything less, it's moving fraud. Moving fraud is the greatest amount of fraud in the nation, even higher than identity theft. Okay, I called 4 other people who quoted me somewhere between 10 and 20,000. I called back the procurement guy and I said, hey, I think we should go with that 50 to 60 guy. I think that's a good bet. And he said, no, that's against the law. You have to go with the cheaper people. And that story played out multiple times, with us culminating in having to do a police-attended raid on a warehouse back east to get stuff that was stolen from us, about a third of our things, and correct breach of contract multiple times until we finally got a solid Alaskan mover, verified and vetted up here, to finish the move. I documented every one of these breaches of contracts. I turned it all over to the Attorney General so that they could recover the delta between what the move should have been and what the move actually was. And for all I know, they have recovered those costs, but those investigations are confidential and they're not allowed to talk about it. And then I recommended, as commissioner being in charge of processes that could be changed, said we should make a change to the relocation process for everyone. We should centralize relocations, which right now are handled in each department individually. We should go through a procurement bidding process and vet through the best bidders and have 4 or 5 bidders that we know are solid and secure, and that they're going to give us the best deals, have them ready to go, so when we're going to move somebody, we can say, we're going to pick from one of these 5 bidders, and we know that it's going to be a trusted, secure move, and we're going to get the best dollar that we can. And so that's how I addressed that one. You're never going to hear that other side of the story from my opponent's surrogates or from leftist bloggers. You're just going to hear the side that you've already heard. And then on the job, and you can feel free to put in a public records request for this, the position that my husband got, that he found through Commissioner Johnson, was already pre-created. It had already been pre-filled, but had been vacant for a couple of years because they had a hard time finding someone who fit the ability to meet those needs that they were looking for. And so it had been vacant for a while. I don't know all the details behind that because I wasn't involved in it, but Commissioner Johnson found him and he was a great fit. They moved him into that position, but the salary amounts didn't change, the position number didn't change. It was pre-created, pre-filled, and he was hired for it. So I hope that answered all those questions, and please take all that data and feel free to share it with everybody who has questions on those things.
Kelly, first I just want to say thank you for standing up for the state and doing this. But the question that I have for you has to do with our neighbors to the east, because we have a road that was originally built by Americans for us to be able to go back and forth between Alaska and Lower 48. And there's very little talk about making any kind of changes to where we have our full access to our road in that treaty. And what would you do once you're in DC for that?
So, I think that this is a moving target with some of the policies that we're seeing come out of the Trudeau administration. What I know from having been in the intelligence community for more than 10 years is we're supposed to have a really close relationship with Canada. And I think that relationship, let me back up and I'll explain to you guys what I'm thinking and then I'll help answer the question. When you're in the intelligence community, you have to mark every paragraph and every document with a classification. So it's unclassified, or it's secret, or it's top secret, or it's no foreigners, you get the idea. One of the classifications is Five Eyes. Five Eyes means we have a really, really, really close trusting relationship between 5 countries, the US, Great Britain, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. We can turn our backs on each other and be in a tight circle. We're going to fight all the rest of the world behind, because if that 5-nation alliance breaks, the world is in jeopardy, is the idea. So we don't spy on each other, we don't hurt each other, we'll never declare war on each other, we'll never do things like what they're doing right now. And so Five Eyes means that this document can be seen by the Five Eyes community. You get the idea, because you understand the Five Eyes treaties and principles. Okay. I think we got ourselves into this situation with Canada when the administration canceled the Keystone XL pipeline. So in the broader spectrum of global politics, a nation is a nation is a nation. Can you tell me the last 3 names of the prime ministers of the United Kingdom? No. Unless you're really wonky about it, the United Kingdom is the United Kingdom is the United Kingdom. So when we greenlit Keystone XL, we developed an economic alliance with Canada, right? Their economy went this way. And then, when we change out administrations, we as the United States should not have changed such a big policy, but one of the first things he did was kill an economic alliance with Canada. Well guys, you can't do that if you're Five Eyes. That's economic war. And when you declare economic war on an ally, what do? Yep. And Canada just does not have a lot of cards that they can play in economic war on the United States. But there's one they can play, and they understand what we understand, which is Alaska is foundational to the rest of the lower 48. And so whether it's our cruise line, which I don't think was really about COVID first year, or it's our road, which is about trucking, or it's you fill in the blank. And so I think a large part of what it's going to be is rebuilding diplomatic relations. Because who in our delegation championed in this administration, even though he campaigned on shutting down all fossil fuels? And so when you're a Five Eyes country looking for who you're going to take out your pain on, it wasn't on South Dakota that they targeted, right? And that's what I think we do, is we've got to just have a bigger global understanding of what's going on here and all the players on the stage. And it was surprising to me when our senior senator said, I just don't understand why our friends in the Canadian delegation didn't call us. Because I don't think you understand Five Eyes. And when you were so vociferous about getting out a pro-oil administration that greenlit this, and ushering in the administration that shut this down and campaigned on shutting it down, I think that we opened the door for what's been happening the last 2 years. And that's what we need to change. It's just an understanding of the role that we play in a larger global picture.
The Biden administration now wants to send billions more American tax dollars to Ukraine. I would prefer our money be spent on securing our American border. How do you feel about this?
Okay, let's start with recognizing what needs to be recognized. If you've heard any of the stories I've heard, the human heart cannot comprehend the inhumanity and the human rights crimes that are being committed by Vladimir Putin right now. So we have to acknowledge that. This is an unprovoked attack that is horrible and has to be addressed. It has to be. And the way to address it is for Joe Biden to do what he should have done in the beginning, which is keep the sanctions on Nord Stream 2, enforce Germany's participation in NATO, and not shut off domestic oil and gas development. When we exited from being the power players on the global stage and decided to put Putin on top of the oil and gas mountain, so he has an iron fist on energy globally, we were the ones who set this stage. There is one way to change the stage, and I think that you have a very good point that sending your money and our military members, our sons and daughters, to the end of Putin's pistol to maintain his border when we can't maintain our border is very questionable. We've got so many issues we can't handle domestically when they could handle all of this diplomatically. Turn on, you know what? Reopen NPRA, reopen Willow, reopen Anwar, reopen all the oil and gas production, get domestic oil and gas. We were not in this situation 2 years ago. Putin never would have done this 2 years ago. Sanction Nord Stream 2, bend Germany's knee, and we don't have this crisis. But every day goes by, and we just see that the Biden administration, I think, and there was a confession by this by one of his top people, I think that they are allowing this because the food shortages and the gas shortages are going to drive further dependence on green energy. This was in the paper this week. And so how much of this is just, don't let the good crisis go to waste, as she said, okay? This is a humanitarian crisis, and we don't sacrifice Ukrainians on the altar of renewable energy. Do what we need to do to rebalance the globe. That's what needs to happen.
Kelly, thank you for I think I'm on. There we go. Thank you for being here. You spoke very well about life begins at conception and your approach and your understanding of abortion. And of course, I've been reading some of the leaked documents from the Supreme Court regarding the Roe versus Wade possible overturn. And one of the great challenges is that Roe, of course, is Roe versus Wade and Doe versus Bolton. And Doe versus Bolton brought in the concept of exceptions to any abortion law. And so if Roe is overturned, we return to states' rights most likely, and that bodes well for a lot of states except for Alaska. Federally, there's nothing that says the federal government would protect babies from that moment of conception. The possibility exists that we could have a federal, say, Life at Conception Act, and usually those contain exceptions for the life of the mother, the health of the mother, fetal anomalies, things like that. Which of those exceptions would you support?
Thanks for the nuanced question. I think that this is already addressed in the Constitution. So we've got to remember, we go back to a foundational document, and the 14th Amendment says that states cannot deprive a right of life without due process of law. And so I'm not a fan of, well, let's just kick it back to the states, because what happens when all the states then decide the same predicament that we're in now? So I agree with what you've said, that handling this federally to protect life is important. I believe that protecting the right to life, the life of a mother, not the health of a mother. When you're in a situation like an ectopic pregnancy, I don't know if any of you have had that, that is a pregnancy, but that also could kill the mom. And so that's a situation where you're in a situation where somebody's not leaving that delivery room, and that is a hard decision to make. And I don't think government should come in and tell you what decision to make. That's a family decision. I hope none of you have had to be in that decision that we've had to face as a family. That's where I'm at, and then that's it. Otherwise, it's due process of law covers it, and that's in the 5th and 14th Amendments.
May I follow up with just one quick question? Thank you. So, addressing the ectopic pregnancy issue is super important. It's just not turning on.
It's working.
Huh? Oh, was it? How about that? Sorry. The ectopic pregnancy issue is super important, and it sounds like you just kind of mentioned that you know somebody went through that, and that is super difficult. Dealing with an ectopic pregnancy is not an abortion issue. an abortion by medical and legal definition is a procedure that's performed for the exclusive purpose of killing the baby before it's born.
Perfect, and that solves that.
Yeah, so preserving the mother's health and her life in an ectopic pregnancy situation isn't an abortion conversation issue at all. That's just proper medicine, right?
Great.
But in the context of abortion, then what I hear you saying, I don't want to put words in your mouth, what I hear you say is that you would not allow for exceptions at all then. Am I understanding
So if
correctly?
there's a situation where the life of the mother is, she's gonna lose her life in this situation. I don't know what these fact patterns would be. We had a situation that was similar to this. That's a family decision. Otherwise, I think it's covered under due process of law as the exception given in the Constitution, but it's not an exception given in statute.
Thank you.
Okay, yes.
Something that is never talked about is quiet wars with silent weapons. And I consider one of the silent weapons, or what you're talking about right now, is abortion. What do you think about the quiet wars with silent weapons? Because they are making weapons with frequencies that can mess with your mind. COVID, in my opinion, was one of the quiet or silent weapons. Do you believe in this? I haven't heard anybody talk about this lately. It used to be talked about.
So I like the way that you phrase it. This absolutely is a part of common day warfare. I can validate that from my time in the intelligence community. We've moved long past the use of bombs and guns, right? The main way that we do silent wars is cyber war, which we're seeing all over the place. I think one of the largest threats that we have right now is to mainframes and power grids, and you've seen some of the suspicious power grid blackouts that I've seen. And so we absolutely are all over this and watching this as a nation. My question is since the 10 or whatever years I've been out of the national security community is, how much are they watching that versus how much are they watching their political enemies? Because I'm sure seeing a lot of spying on our political enemies domestically, which they don't have authority to do, and a lot less of keeping your eye on the ball of the real enemy, which we are evolving daily, you know, machine learning, AI, the things that we can do in darknet, the things that you can do. We obviously have seen what they're trying to do with medical technology is the stuff that we need to watch. And I think we see, when we read the Constitution, the way I see it is like a game of rock, paper, scissors. Everybody remember? It's been a while. Which one's the most important? Which one's the biggest, most powerful? They all outweigh the other, right? And that's the three branches of government. And this checks and balances and the system of separation of powers. Each one can balance and check the other. And the Congress, especially the Senate, is the one supposed to check and balance the executive branch. And when they don't do that, then the executive branch comes after us, right? And so that's what I'm curious about is I'm not seeing, like for example, I used to train the bureaucrats, if you abuse your authority, you lose your authority. My job here is to make sure that you're within the bounds of your authority and I'm watching you, but make sure that if you go over this line, Congress is gonna get you. Because we used to have committees in Congress that came after the executive branch for abusing its authority. Well, now I see committees in Congress going after US citizens, and I don't see that in the Constitution. And I would like us to get back to looking at what's actually the real threat here between whether it's, you know, our government coming after us or other governments coming after us, because we have those committees too. What are the threats against Americans? Yeah.
Thank you for coming this evening. On my way here, I stopped to talk to my postman and get my mail, which included my 2 ballots, and he said 50% of the ballots were going back. They were addressed incorrectly, the people weren't there anymore, blah, blah, blah. 50% is what he told me tonight. He was kind of upset. So over the last 5 years, I believe we've seen a major failing with the United States Post Office. I mailed hundreds of dollars worth of plants and paid hundreds of dollars to do it, and it took weeks for them to arrive, or 48 dead. So now that we see that voting by mail is a thing, I wrote to Lisa multiple times about the failings of the USPS. Right, the initials, right? Oh, office. So what can you do about that? I know you worked for them at one point. I think it's sad and scary. We need our United States Postal Service.
All great questions. And you said the acronym right, USPS, so you nailed it. And then I worked over them is probably the better word. I was part of the oversight entity that was supposed to hold Postal Service accountable. So I think everybody in the room wants to see the Postal Service improved, and that's what I did. So I was the Chief Data Officer for the group that oversaw the Postal Service. We need Postal Service reform, and it's been talked about in Congress. They've tried to take it on. It's very challenging. The Postal Service has over 600,000 employees, tens of thousands of contractors, $13 billion in contracts, facilities that will just marvel your mind. What they do is really impressive. Fixing what they do is really complicated, and trying to do that from Congress when, again, look around, how many of the senators know the Postal Service? And so you're going to try and regulate a semi-private agency when you've probably never even toured a postal distribution facility. I think that we're getting to a place where we desperately need to do it, or in Alaska we're going to hurt the most because we are dependent on what we call last mile delivery. So the way that the system works, the logistics system in America, you can choose your mail provider, but there's only one mail provider that guarantees delivery to your address, the last mile, even if you live out in our very rural communities and you don't have a home address, and that's the Postal Service, they're required to. So we call that last mile delivery. So all of your vendors, UPS, FedEx, et cetera, will have to contract with Postal Service to get the package to the last mile. Last mile delivery is now being threatened. You know, we've talked about Sunday delivery being threatened, now Saturday delivery is being threatened. It's becoming unaffordable to maintain last mile delivery. Well, who's going to pay the price if they cut last mile delivery because they did not reform Postal Service and fix these problems to get it to be where it's financially solvent to maintain last mile delivery? Alaskans pay the price every time. And who's not doing the job? Our representatives aren't doing the job to get on top of a tough problem. And so this is something that I am looking at and focused on, and fortunately know something about, and people who can help with what do we actually need to do to fix it. And I'll give you an example. Having been inside the oversight mechanism, one of the things that was really challenging for us as Postal Service headquarters continues to this day to use their economic forecasting model based on the first class envelope. When was the last time any of you sent a first class envelope with a stamp? That is not their economy. We're sending packages and receiving packages, right? It's boxes, boxes, boxes. But their entire financial model, their forecasting, their budgeting, everything is thinking that we're all sending notes to grandma and grandpa and grandchildren. And we're not sending handwritten letters anymore, and they have not updated even the economic model for the forecasting. So those are some of the basic things that need to change. When I was there, we were developing them into 21st data analytics, and the hundreds of data marks on a package where they could track all 8 million packages in the system every day, so that we could track and we can have red flags, just like you do when you're at McDonald's and they're like, your order is not on time, bing, 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 so that they'll speed up. So we got to the place where we could do that. And I think data is a large part of how we're going to make the Postal Service better. And I think that there are a lot of things that we can do. We've got to protect last mile delivery in some of these systems and get them to a place of fluidity, financial fluidity, so that Alaska is protected.
Is this on here?
Yeah.
Thank you for coming, by the way, your time. I was just wondering what your ideas, thoughts are on education, on school choice, homeschooling, and which goes into CRT and LGBT norms.
Do we have an hour? So I'll start with the last part of time. If it hasn't gone through already, I think we need to absolutely champion and support that no federal funds will go to a school, program, or district that engages in CRT indoctrination. We're not going to support any of that. And I say that as the mom of 5 interracial children who come from this story. So this is why we need to remember these stories and remember what we're actually teaching our children. CRT would say that my children are victims, and that anybody who has my skin color always will look at them and just have an automatic racist bent, and that they can never have opportunity in our country. This is our family story. You've heard my family story. My husband's dad grew up in the rainforests of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the youngest of 5 kids raised by a single mom. At the end of high school, he got one scholarship to come over to the United States to go to college. He went to Dartmouth and he learned English and he got his degree and his business degree all in 4 years. My father-in-law is amazing. He met my husband's mom, who's from Minnesota, and whisked her back to Democratic Republic of Congo, where he had a job with Citibank to open the first branch. And he became a Citibank banker. And he managed Citibank operations in DRC, Kenya, Liberia. They moved to Brazil, then over to Spain, and then to Poland and Germany, and then over to England, and then finally to New York, where he was one of the top executive vice presidents for Citibank for the world. Don't tell me our country does not offer opportunities to everybody.
Amen.
My husband then, from there, after learning all these languages and hopping through all these countries, came over for college, and you heard our story, law school. And then we've had the story that we've had. So both of our families have lived the American dream, going from complete poverty to where we're standing before you today going, we're ready. He now works for the Bronson administration running HR. Our kids are doing great. I've got one leaving this summer to go to college, and she's already completed almost 2 years at UAA. So opportunity is exactly like Martin Luther King Jr. said. It's based on content of character, not the color of your skin, and that's what we have lived and experienced. And that's why, especially with our kids, we've got 5, ages 8 to 17, we've done a lot of public school, we've done charter school, we've done homeschool, we've done summer school, we've done it all school. We have got to have child-centric education, not system-centric education. Zip codes don't determine our children's destiny. I would love to see us have a Parents' Bill of Rights. I'd love to see that from the federal level. I don't think parents surrender rights or responsibilities when we enroll our children in school. I think that we can partner with teachers. It doesn't matter to me if it's public school. I was all public school. I have a lot of options. Or if it's in private school, or if you're in homeschool co-op, like my 3 littles are out here at Matsu Central. We've got to develop partnerships that come around the child to say what's best for you. I love this idea of an individual learning plan for each child. We've done IEPs for children who need special support. Don't all children need special support? And what if we built education around the child? And what if the funding followed the child instead of followed the program and followed the system? Remember, we talked about that jobs pipeline. What if here in Alaska, instead of the concept of time and chair gets you there, you sit in your chair long enough, then you graduate? That doesn't work for all kids. What if we did things like you had different ways that you could develop competency? For example, if you're out there doing a stint with a commercial fisherman over the summer, and you're catching and gutting fish, I'm sorry, you're gonna get a lot further doing that than you are gonna be dissecting a frog, so that's a biology credit right there. Right? What if you go out and you do subsistence living and that counts as one of your credits? What if you do an on-the-job training or an apprenticeship, or you go and work with a welder, or you go and do something around the community, you're learning. So now you're developing mentorships and relationships with other people. You're actually getting ready for Alaska industry jobs, and you're getting credit, and it's funded, and we're preparing our children for their future, and we're developing those much-needed relationships where you know who feels most forgotten in our state is our youth. They just feel ignored and overlooked and forgotten, but this is a way that we could do it, is ILPs, competency-based education, child-centric models, where the funding follows the student, and we actually focus on educating, like reading, writing, arithmetic, preparation, rather than indoctrination, because I think we need to get the woke out of the schools.
Where did you get your law degree?
Oh my gosh. I went to Harvard Law, and It was just such an experience. So I got in because I wrote diversity essays. I know that that sounds funny, but I'm gonna shoot that out there as a hint. Alaska makes the best diversity essays. So I wrote about all these experiences growing up in Alaska and the things I did, the rural hunting trips and all these things. So then I got in, and I'm like, oh, and then there's nobody like me there. As an example, criminal law, you know, they're like, gun control, gun control, gun control. I was so confused. And they say there's no stupid questions, so I raised my hand. I said, I thought gun control was this, and I modeled perfect gun control. And they kissed me, they do this Harvard kiss. Oh my goodness. Then I said, how do you eat in the winter, right? You don't say that. Don't say that on the East Coast. Just another piece of advice. I got hissed again. Then shortly after the death threat started. But I didn't stop talking. I remember the first day of class. We had Morty Horowitz. And the law school split between two groups of professors. The professors who got to be in power and then those who lost. And Morty Horowitz was the dean, would have been the dean if they'd won, but now he's just bitter. Okay? Morty Horowitz starts out, we are not gonna teach you anything at this law school. He starts pacing. It's an hour and a half of this, you guys. We don't get paid to teach you here. We get paid to develop you into Harvard Law students. We get paid to write. Every class is the same class year after year. Okay, so he goes on and he says, their job is to give us all B's. That's all they're gonna do, so every student looks the same as every other student. You're all gonna get B's, but the problem is that the reason you got here is you all got A's. Our job is to pick out the smartest students in the nation. That way when you graduate, you're still the smartest students in the nation. But you never got a B before, and so when we're gonna give you all these B's at the end of the semester, guess what's gonna happen to you? You're gonna walk around like the walking wounded, and he models it. Your tail's gonna be between your legs, your shoulders, just look around, I see them everywhere, the walking wounded. You came in with all these dreams of changing the world and doing great things and going into public service, but you become the walking wounded. B's, B's, B's. He said, we got all of this psychology from military training and boot camp. Don't worry about it, it's all documented in the law reviews, he says. Then he goes, then we're gonna parade in front of you these law firms the very beginning of second year, which they did, and they're gonna hand out these really, really lucrative law firm offers, which they did, and you're gonna be stupid enough to take it, because we killed your self-esteem. And then we're gonna send you a letter, give back to the law school that gave so much to you. Okay? And so he's trying to convince us that this is all bogus and we really should get back to teaching students. Well, I just listened to the whole thing and I thought, guys, I'm just an Alaska kid. B's get degrees, right? So I worked so hard first semester. I did everything I normally do to get A's, and guess what? B's, 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 B's. And I said, Morty Horowitz is right. I didn't buy a single book. I just got notes from the kids who took the class in front of me because they just teach the same thing. They were right. The entire class is completely transcripted. And I just started shooting off my mouth. Hey, wait a minute. Hey, wait a minute. Hey, wait a minute. Right? Because there's nothing that they hate more. Guess what prepares you to run for the U.S. Senate? Like I said, could it be that all these things that weren't supposed to be were in fact supposed to be? So that was my experience there. It was, again, if you're thinking about going to law school, let's have a talk. But I'm really glad I met my husband. I'm really glad I listened to Professor Horowitz. And I'm really glad that I made it through with really strong convictions and just gave them a run for their money.
So your husband was in Yale too?
No, we don't say that word in our house.
Oh.
He went,
Harvard.
Yeah, he went to Harvard too, but he also had a similar experience. So we both ended up going into public service and then community service and just kind of didn't do the law firm thing.
Do you think there's much difference between the two?
Between me and him?
No. Between Yale and Harvard. Yeah.
There is, and I could describe that, but basically Harvard, what it does is it takes as large of a class size as possible. It has the largest class size because it's in the business of making money, and Yale has the smallest class size possible. And so it's much more personal and kind of hands-on. So, yeah. Someone had asked me, so we're at 8:30 and I imagine people are, have to go to work and school and everything tomorrow. What can we do to help? And so I'll finish with that. There are 4 M's that are easy to remember. The first is money. You're not funding me, we're funding the future of Alaska, and I need your help. Remember, we only have 3.5 months left. This helps me travel. Your money helps me get to all these communities where we've been. This has gone so well. The Alaska Native leader who ran Murkowski's rural write-in campaign in 2010 and is not a Republican has come out of retirement to join our team to help mobilize rural Alaska and the Alaska Native vote for us.
Wow.
So that's how well we're doing. We have more communities to get to, more people to talk to, and this is how you change the state. Remember, it comes down to 300,000 votes. Every vote counts. So polling in these communities, every town at a time. I was just in Ketchikan yesterday. That's right. It's been a campaign. And we were there for 3 days, and that was a second trip down there for us. So when you help us financially, we can go those places. We don't need to beat Mitch McConnell and his McMillions. We really don't. We just need to fund our campaign, and our campaign is mostly funded by Alaskans. So when you pitch in your 20 bucks, your 500 bucks, if people in this room are sitting on 5,800 bucks, please, that's great. Any amount you can give in that spectrum, every dollar actually helps and goes a really long way. So money matters. Number 2, media. I have someone here helping me. Heather, can you raise your hands? And Josiah, can you raise your hands? Josiah's my son. We can take your photo and get an endorsement quote. We can take your video and say, I'm with Kelly because, and if you're like, I don't know what to say after that because I'd rather die than speak. Great, we can help you. And those make so much help because we don't really care if DC insiders are endorsing my opponent. We care about what Alaskans are saying. Shameless self-promotion doesn't go far in Alaska. You can't campaign from California and think you're gonna win this race. But Alaskans saying, I am with her and this is why. Somebody else sees it and goes, oh, I'm just like him, I'm just like her. Oh, I relate with that. Then they're on board. So your testimony matters and makes a difference. Also, following and sharing whatever you see. Pick your social media platform. I'm on Kelly for Alaska. We then break those cancel efforts from big tech when they're trying to shut us down, and then it goes into trending. So you help me break them trying to cancel me when you repost my things. It breaks their algorithm because they do try and shut us down. So the media matters. Money, media, meetings. If you have a group to get together, you're like, hey, I would like my community to get together. I know people in my company. I've got friends. We could do a backyard barbecue, whatever. I would love to meet your people. We can stack these at breakfast, morning, dinner, whatever. I'm game. Happy to come out and happy to meet. Which community is going to make this race? Which community is going to change this nation? But we can't do it if I don't know anybody, right? So you're my key to getting to know people. So please, meetings matter. And then number 4 is mobilize. We are in the sprint of campaign season, so we need your help. We need your help with signs. We need your help with phone calls. We need your help with getting out the vote. And if you want to help us, there's a lot of talk about, concern about how are we going to get a fair election. If you're interested in that, I happen to know what to do. I can't tell you, but I can tell you what to look for and put like a miniature audit brain in you on poll day and on a ballot counting month. We're going to be counting ballots for the entire month of November. And if you want to be part of that process to make sure we get as clean of an election as possible, we are taking names and numbers and we will train as many people as we can. A battalion of volunteers will really help us with this election. Money, meetings, media, and mobilize. Those are our 4 M's, okay? Thanks so much for coming tonight, and I'm happy to talk afterwards.
I think some people still have some announcements, so if everybody can just wait a couple minutes. On the back wall, under the media, is the new redistricting map for the assembly and the school board for Mat-Su Borough. So if you're looking for, there'll be 5 seats up in the school board, and there will be 2 seats up in the assembly. So be sure if you know somebody that should be running, be sure that you look there at the maps. And anybody else have any other announcements? Yeah, Steve, go ahead.
Steve Carrington, former mayor. I've got a few applications for appointment to the city council. You have to live in the city for at least a year and be brave.
Good. I think you have to live in the city a year, right, Steve? Yeah, 1 year, and then you can run. There will be three positions they're looking for. Okay, anybody else have anything else?
If
Yeah,
you
go
guys
ahead.
want a yard sign for Kelly, in your yard, there's a green sign-up sheet you can put your address on, and they'll put the sign for you.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, Mike?
This Saturday, Chugach Senior Center at 11 a.m.
Hello, my fellow Alaskans. Thank you all for tuning in here tonight. Really do appreciate it. I'm glad you guys could all participate in this tonight and listening to, oh, let me shut that other one off there. And that was Kelly Tshibaka, and she is running for Alaska U.S. State Senate for Alaska. This was a restream so that we could get it up onto YouTube and Twitter, and also Politadick Unfiltered. And for those of you that tuned in on Politadick and you watched this one too, thank you very much for being here today. Remember to like and share. News update for tomorrow, we will be live streaming HB 140, doubling the motor fuel tax. That'll begin at promptly 10 a.m. That will be on the House floor, so they will be voting on doubling our fuel tax at the same time that they're wanting to steal our permanent fund dividends, 75% of them. So just so you're really clear on what's going on down there. And then promptly at 11 o'clock, they will have SB 199. The Senate brought forward. The bill was for the 2575 step up PFD, that they may or may not pay us a 50-50 by the end of 2025. That's less than 25% for 3 more years until 2025, and then if they don't get $800 million in new taxes, then they will not go to the 50-50 formula, and then they go to the second portion of SB 199, which is SB 200, which permanently locks it in on a 25-75 split. And the language inside of the statute that they are writing says they may or may not actually pay us a PFD throughout any of these years I've just talked about. They could just say, no, we don't want to pay you this one this year, and that is their choice because they may or may not follow their own laws that they pass. So this is going to be a very heated and contentious bill that will start at 11 o'clock tomorrow. And if any legislator down there has a brain in their head and expects to be re-elected again, or have any chances of being re-elected in August, make it through the primaries to make it into the November general election, they will vote no for this bill. If you have not contacted your legislator, it will be a good time to be on the phone first thing in the morning and calling them, flooding them with emails telling them hell no to SB 199 and quit being thieves and be responsible legislators and start looking out for the majority of Alaskans, which is what they're supposed to be doing in the first place. I really do appreciate you guys all hanging out this late at night. And again, if you're on Twitter and YouTube, this is the first time you've got to see this. If you're on Politadick, this is a stream of this earlier live stream that was on Facebook. And for Politadick Unfiltered, this is brand new for you too. You guys all have a great evening. Make sure you go to our website, politadick.com, and click that support button. All proceeds go right back into making sure that we can run and keep up with the cost of the Restream services, the website, the upgrade of equipment. We just bought a new power cord, 50-foot long, just so that we can keep the laptop running to be able to do this particular stream here tonight, and be able to record it all so that we can be able to restream on the right platform instead of just on Facebook. So again, thank you all for being here tonight, and you guys like and share, and I will see you tomorrow morning.